here in New York City, a place that is legendarily tough and big and complicated.
Good thing about New Yorkers is they look the same whether they're really pissed off at you or they like you.
People in every part of this country feel stuck or even like they're going backwards. But here in New York City, a place that is...
I'm Bill de Blasio, and I'm running for president because it's time we put working people first.
Don't you think voters should get to decide whether to change Illinois' tax system? That's what's about to be determined in Springfield. A yes vote by the legislature will put the fair tax on the ballot, so you get a chance to decide. Tell your representative, we deserve a vote.
I'm not a perfect person.
False, nonsensical, completely incorrect. That's what newspapers call the attacks against the fair tax. They can't defeat the plan on its merits, so they're trying to jump it on the low road. If the General Assembly gives the green light, we're all going to have a say at the polls next November. The people of Illinois deserve a chance to vote on this important proposal. This is fair and necessary. It's time for change. Let's make our tax system fair.
All right, everybody, we're ready. Today's Ben Joravsky Show for your Thursday, May 16th is moments away. But before we get into that, we would like to thank the following unions for making the Ben Joravsky Show return here. First up, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. Maybe. Okay, there we go. It is Thursday, May 16th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, Sun-Times editor Evan Moore will join us. We welcome union woman Kim Ortiz, and it's Nicole Quintello, president of the American Federation of Government Employees. And now your host, definitely not a member of the American Federation of Government Employees. They'd hate his guts.
No.
Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Smartocracy City. And here's why.
Look at the brain on Ben.
I read 2 editorials today, D. Not one, but 2. 2 editorials. Urging Lori Lightfoot, please, Lori, please save us from aldermanic prerogative. Okay, I know you're all sick of this topic. I'm sick of this topic. Dennis is sick of the topic. Miles is so sick of this topic that he's going all the way to Europe so he doesn't have to hear about it anymore.
You got room in that plane for me? Sick of this too.
But there's a larger point, people. As long as everybody else in the world is going to advocate for the abolition of aldermanic prerogative, I believe it is necessary for me to point out that it doesn't even exist. We're trying to eradicate a problem that is a fraudulent thing. It's a myth. All right. And you know what it underscores? I'll tell you what it underscores, D. You know what it underscores?
What does it underscore?
It underscores that we don't like democracy in the city of Chicago, that we are what I call a smartocracy. You know what that means?
No.
I don't know either. I just made it up.
Oh, okay.
It's a word in which the city is run by smart people. Not by, wow, they're smart and we're not. What does Mayor Rahm always say?
I'm smart and you're not.
Yeah, well, that's what we have here in the city of Chicago.
Romtocracy.
Rahm smartocracy. Everybody's smart and we're dumb. All right, one more time. Let me break it down, folks. Aldermanic prerogative is the so-called practice in which aldermen have total control over what goes on their wards. I call it a so-called practice because it doesn't exist. Chicago aldermen only control the little things that don't matter, that the mayor doesn't want to control, like awnings, sidewalk cafes, et cetera, et cetera. The mayor controls the big things, like, to give you one example, $1.3 billion property tax handout that just went down to developers to develop the 78 in the South Loop. The mayor said, give them the money. I don't care if it raises your taxes. I want to subsidize the development of upscale projects in a neighborhood that's already gentrifying. The local alderman, Byron Sitcho Lopez, said, no, I don't want it. Don't be for it. The rest of the aldermen said, the hell with you. We do whatever the mayor says. And the obedient puppets that they are, they voted to approve it. So instead of getting rid of aldermanic prerogative, I think we should get rid of mayoral prerogative because that causes a lot more problems. Now, back to the issue of democracy. The Sun-Times and the Tribune editorial writers, like many smart people in the city of Chicago, want to take zoning issues out of the hands of the local alderman. They want to put it in the hands of some city hall bureaucrat who owes his or her job to the mayor. Great. More power for the mayor. Just what we don't need. It's the mayor that's abusing his power on a grand scale. The aldermen just abuse their power on a little scale and participate in the abuse of power on the grand scale whenever the mayor says jump, and then they go, how high? That is so Chicago, by the way. The notion that we give more power to mayoral aides and less power to the people. Let's think about this. Chicago is the only municipality in the state of Illinois that doesn't have an elected school board. Guess who appoints our school board? The mayor. Oh, great job you done with that school board. The last CEO, 2 CEOs now ago, is now doing time at a federal penitentiary for an insider deal that was approved by the mayor's appointed school board. Well, don't want to have democracy at the school board. How about a referendum and term limits? Pat Quinn, remember that, D? Got 80,000 signatures to petitions. We had an election on it. Mayor's against it. Guess what? We don't even know what the results were. People voted. We don't even know what the results are because Mayor Rahm's got it tied up in court. You don't get a say, peasants of Chicago. It's like, just shut up and pay your taxes. No say on TIFs, no say on schools, no say now on zoning. Just give the mayor your property tax dollars. Like I said, folks, in Chicago, they hate democracy. We got a great show today, everybody. Evan Moore will be here in about 30 minutes. Evan Moore from the Chicago Sun-Times. We're talking neighborhood issues, political issues, Sun-Times issues, whatever's on his mind. I'm going to ask him about the Bulls, D. I know I might have to send you out of the room to talk about the Bulls lottery.
Not a sports show.
Oh, God. Did you follow the lottery, though?
Yeah.
I'm so depressed.
But I know that this is not a sports show.
Hold on. I'm going to drink some alcohol.
Okay. We got nothing going on. Drink that water. That's fine. We're not hosting a show or anything. It's all good.
That's Jim Beam, Jack Daniels.
Okay. No, it's not.
Kim Ortiz will be here at 2 o'clock, and she is with Local 150. We're talking union issues. Big decision went down yesterday or a couple of days ago. The National Labor Relations Board basically said that Uber and Lyft drivers can't unionize. Oh, there we go. The gig economy works well for everybody except for the people who are working in it. So we'll be talking about that and other labor issues. And at 2:30, Nicole Cantello from the EPA. She's a lawyer from the EPA. She knows more about environmental issues than anyone else in the city of Chicago. Well, maybe as much as a lot of other people. She can also talk about the fight, the struggles that EPA employees are having with their agency. She's the president of the American Federation of Governmental Employees. So a lot of environmental talk, union talk, political talk. It's all on tap. We're going to have a great show. As we say, farewell to Miles. Miles is heading off today.
I know, it's sad.
It is sad. And I'm thinking of taking away his airline ticket.
And using it?
No, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to Europe. I got a show to do. All right? Get down to business, boy. Anyway, I hear you have some news, young man.
Yeah, I do.
Well, let's deliver it.
All right. It's the middle of the day. Let's talk about the national news happening this afternoon. Actually, before we do that, the live stream chat room has weighed in.
Oh, yeah.
Live stream chat room. What's going on, guys? Steven, he's become a regular on the live stream chat. He says the people should control the big things. Rom-authoritarianism, more like it.
I like that. That's even better than the...
Write it down. Wait, hold
on. That's good. Rom, hold on.
Yeah.
Rom, Authoritarian. That's a hard. That's so true. That's what it is. Rom authoritarian. And I guess they want Lori authoritarianism. For that, it was daily authoritarianism.
All right, and the live stream chat also, Pat Rod weighed in. He says, "What up, guys? Watch out for tornadoes." Yeah, it's kind of nasty out there.
Yeah, it is. Miles got soaked.
I know.
He had to change his shirt.
All right,
good thing he brought another shirt.
Some national news here. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has offered a scathing response to the immigration reform package that the Trump administration is unveiling today, calling it, quote, an insult to our grand tradition of welcoming immigrants from all walks of life.
You know, I am moving toward a position that's going to get me kicked out of every club I've ever been in. I've never been in any club, so they can't really kick me out of any club.
Miles, lock the door.
I'm for open borders. More and more I think about it. Money goes across the border. Capital goes across the border. Why not labor? People say, oh, Ben, but then they'll take all these immigrants coming in from all these different countries will take away our jobs. And I'm like, there's huge chunks of this country that need people. We need people in areas of Chicago. Let's just think about it, folks. We got people in camps. We're separating families. We're locking up children. I'm just throwing that out there to think about. I know my libertarian friends. We're going to... Hold on.
Oh, they under there?
Yep, they're under the tape. Yep.
Always
libertarian.
Under that table.
I'm always so afraid of Trump's tweet. They hide under the table. I'm just throwing that out there, D. Everybody's turning themselves into knots, trying to figure out how many immigrants should we let in and who gets in and who gets out. I'm like, yeah, you work that hard to get here. Your chances are you're going to be a good citizen. So why not head in the direction of open borders? Just throwing it out there as a suggestion.
And hey, all those Republicans hiding under our table, pick up your garbage. My God, after the show, I got to pick up after
I'll tell you what, Republicans
weirdos.
are so afraid. Oh, we believe in free markets. All right, if you believe in free markets, let's have a free market for people who want to come to this country to work for Mexico. Open borders. Oh, wait, there they are, under the table. They're afraid
Pick up your garbage. All right,
They're so afraid of a Donald Trump tweet.
In other news nationally, I got to get to Washington. Gene Simmons from KISS made a visit to D.C. today and the Pentagon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you name one KISS song?
You're damn right.
Beth.
Who? That's a song. Beth?
I don't know. Is that a song, Miles? I don't know. Yeah.
Detroit Rock City.
Oh, what does that go like?
I'm not going to sing.
Come on.
Reporting the news. KISS rocker Gene Simmons made a surprise visit to the White House and the Pentagon. According to reports, Simmons thanked American troops for their service, choked back tears as he talked about how his mother survived a Nazi concentration camp.
Oh, I didn't know that.
A lot of stuff you don't know about Gene Simmons.
I really know nothing about KISS other than they're the ones that wear the elaborate makeup, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I think they have a song called Beth. Where's Frank when I need him to weigh in and let me know?
Frank, give us a KISS song.
I think it's Beth. Don't quote me on that, though, all right?
All right, I won't quote you on that. Don't worry. All right, some 2020 POTUS candidate updates. It looks like a poll recently came out from that Nate Silver poll nerd guy, 538.com. Most recent poll listed by 538.com for Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. Each shows same top 3 2020 Democratic candidates.
Wait, let me see if I can guess them.
All right, do number 1.
Number 1 would be Joe Biden.
Yep, Grandpa Joe. Number 2?
Bernie Sanders.
All right, and number 3. Go for it.
I'm going to go and say Elizabeth Warren.
You're wrong.
Oh, wait, time out.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
That is a song by Meatloaf.
All right. Hang tight, millennials. We got a fantastic show for you today, all right? Kiss,
2
Meatloaf.
out of 3
Please.
ain't bad. Sorry.
Listeners are gone.
All right. Wait, time out. So it's Biden, Bernie.
Yep. And
Wait, time out. You're telling my old boy from South Bend is on there?
South Bend,
You gotta
Indiana.
be kidding me.
What's his last name again, Ben?
Buttigieg?
Yeah.
You're serious?
South-
He's third in Iowa?
He's 3rd, Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada.
Come on. Can I just talk to millennials out there? Guys, come on. I know you're really into your little millennial thing, and you love him because he's young, and you're young, and, oh, we're young. You're not going to be young forever, millennials. That's number 1. Number 2, the guy's not done anything. What's he done, D? Huh? I mean, I know what you're going to say, millennials. I know how you think. You go, well, what did Obama do? All right, what's a good point like that? Well, first of all, he was elected statewide as opposed to just being elected in a city, so he did that. And 2, as a black man getting elected statewide, that was a huge achievement. All right, and he also showed something on a national stage when he gave that credible speech. So he did some things more than Buttigieg. Oh, man. What percent is he at? Does it say?
It doesn't say. Shout out to Frank. Frank has weighed in.
Oh.
There is a KISS song called Beth.
Yes.
And another KISS song is Dr. Love.
Whoa. Is it about you?
No. Why would it be about me?
Well,
I wasn't
because
even born when the song was made.
You're Dr. D, and the
let's hear this
ladies
one.
all love you for your body and your mind.
Only you say both of those things.
And in downstate, they call you White Lightning.
Now, this is me changing the subject. Nate Silver, the
yeah.
poll nerd, as we call him here on the Ben Joravsky Show.
A whiz-bang job in the 2016 election. Oh, we're glad we're listening to you.
Yeah,
Hillary Clinton's in.
Old Nate Dogg may need to do some polls again because in other news nationally, Ben, Get your list out. Another Democratic presidential hopeful has squeezed and shuffled his way into this already heavily crowded room. We may have a fire hazard on our hands,
Hold
Ben.
on, got to get the cheat sheet out.
Yep, we got one more to add.
All right, hold
I'm
on.
Bill de Blasio, and I'm running for president
Blasio.
because it's time we put working people first.
That's right. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is running for president. The progressive two-term mayor announced his run, of course, with a video released by his campaign. We heard the rumor a week or two ago, and it's true. But this may be a bigger fight than old de Blasio thinks, all right? And I think our mayor for 4 more days here in Chicago can relate with this one. Polls have shown a vast majority of New Yorkers, 76%, don't think that de Blasio should run for president, and he's been mocked in New York ever since the rumors broke out.
Wait, time out. 76%?
76% of people who are New Yorkers think he should not run for
I actually
president.
think he's doing better than Rahm. I'll bet you if you did a poll of Chicagoans. Hey, Chicagoans, how many of you think Rahm should be president of the United States? Well, actually, if it meant getting him out of Chicago, you might find a surprising number who would vote for that. But 76% is pretty bad.
Yeah, so New York kind of
God.
hates his guts, but hey, at least he's got jokes, all right? When asked about the lack of enthusiasm in the polls, de Blasio said, quote, "Hey, I'm glad I've unified the people of New York City."
It's actually not bad, but you know,
You
he's
warming
not-
up to him?
He's no.
okay.
Look, here's my issue with de Blasio. De Blasio came into office as mayor of New York City, professing to be a great progressive and championing progressive causes. And as he was leaving, he signed on to the Amazon deal, their version of the Amazon deal. And people know that I was crusading against Chicago and Illinois, giving a blank check to Amazon. It was effectively a blank check, people. You didn't even know how much your Mayor Rahm, your governor, the old guy, Rauner, were offering. It was just basically Amazon, take our money wherever you want to go. Remember they were ushering Amazon around the city of Chicago, D. And when Fran Spielman asked, well, what sites are you taking them to? The city of Chicago, our representative said, none of your business. You know, there's a non-disclosure agreement that we've signed with Amazon. So we're offering them valuable land, valuable real estate in the city of Chicago, but we're not going to tell you, the taxpayers, where we're offering it. None of your business. Shut up and pay the bill. And that's the attitude that Chicagoans have in general toward, Chicago leaders have in general toward taxpayers and residents of the city. And it's very similar, apparently, in New York City. De Blasio and Andrew Cuomo, the governor of the state of New York, tag team to offer Amazon. We don't even know what they offered Amazon. And then when Amazon announced, hey, drum roll, we're going to New York City, and they thought everybody would be happy. But by then, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been elected congresswoman from a district in the Bronx. And she said, in Queens, where they were going to put the Amazon. She goes, I don't know anybody who wants it. And next thing you know, tides change. And de Blasio like, habada. Yeah, suddenly wait, maybe it's not such a good idea. Where was that common sense opposition to giving out a blank check to Amazon when we needed it, Bill de Blasio? So I'm not ready to jump on the Bill de Blasio bandwagon.
Wait, did someone say Bruce Rauner?
Yay for our teachers! Yay for our teachers!
Like 4 minutes ago?
Oh, Rauner was unbelievable. He doesn't want anybody who is like middle class to get like a pension, but he was all set to give $2 billion or whatever to Amazon.
All right, we'll end out the national news with the rest of the video from Bill de Blasio. Let's see how much of this we can stomach.
Here in New York City, a place that is legendarily tough and big and complicated. Good thing about New Yorkers is they look the same whether they're really pissed off at you or they like you. People in every part of this country feel stuck or even like they're going backwards. But the rich got richer.
I'm a New Yorker. I've known Trump's a bully for a long time. This is not news to me or anyone else here. And I know how to take him on. Don't back down in the face of a bully. Confront him. Take him on. As president, I will take on the wealthy. I will take on the big corporations. I will not rest until this government serves working people.
All right, I think that's about enough for this stuff.
Oh, God. Well, you know, more and more. I would say this. By the way, Donald Trump was elected president, and he's a native New Yorker. He's from New York City. His home is New York. He's not popular. So de Blasio is probably looking at how unpopular Donald Trump is in New York City and figuring, oh, well, it worked for him. Maybe it'll work for me. Maybe being unpopular in my home town. Actually, I think de Blasio, don't quote me on this, D, is from Boston. I'm not even sure he is from New York.
Frank.
I could be mixing him up with Bloomberg, who was the mayor before him, who I also believe is from Boston. So, Frank, do a little research.
By the way, Frank, if this show ever goes big time, like we're like millionaires or something, dude, we are hiring you to be like our fact checker. Right?
Absolutely.
We're like broke, so I don't think that'll ever happen anytime. I rode the bus here, all right?
Me too.
Oh.
No, I took the train.
Aren't we special? Yeah. All right. Now, of course, we will keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along because we're moving along. Mm-hmm. We're going to find out what's going on locally after this break because, people, we are going to find out what else is news.
Okay. Cannot wait.
Stick around.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. What's so funny?
We have a correction.
Live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
We are indeed live. Breaking news on the Ben Joravsky Show. Correction time.
Make
Hold
the breaking news noise.
Here we go. Wait, is that the breaking noise?
Oh.
Is that the breaking
No,
news? Is this? Oh,
there you go. Boy, we are giving you some entertainment today, people.
Breaking news from Frank. He tells me that Bill de Blasio was, in fact, born in New York City. Thank you, Frank. But for some reason, I don't know why, I think he is a Red Sox fan. I don't know. Frank, get more. Is he a?
Give Frank a break.
Poor Frank's exhausted. But anyway, so he is definitely from New York City. My apologies to absolutely everyone. I told you not to quote me, so there you go.
All right, we're about to find out what's going on locally, everybody. It's time for What Else is News. Our mayor-elect has 4 more days until we stop calling her that. Starting May 20th, Rahm will be out, and she will officially be Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Mm-hmm. Now, for us here on the Ben Joravsky Show, it's a bit of a bummer. It has nothing to do with Lori Lightfoot, really. It's just that as Rahm Emanuel leaves office, so does a good amount of Ben Joravsky Show material. Like that Rahm Riverwalk bit we've been doing. Yeah, that's going to be gone in a matter of time.
I have a feeling it'll be around for a while.
That'll be gone.
What bit is that?
That's the Rahm Riverwalk.
How's that go again?
I got to, okay. I, for listeners who maybe knew, I cut a deal with a certain group. I got a little make an extra cash on the side here, so just 1 second. The Rahm Emanuel Riverwalk. Fantastic walk. Please, name it after Rahm. You don't even have to rename it, like that Dan Ryan.
Yeah.
It's the Rahm Riverwalk. Pretty please, rename it.
Come on, Chicagoans, you got to be smarter than this. Rahm gave an interview the other day with this. I think it was with Fran Spielman. Where I don't know how the story came out, but somehow or other it came out that Rahm's going around saying, "I think a good way to honor me is to name the Riverwalk after me." I'm like, first of all, who said they wanted to honor you? Most people I know, most real Chicagoans, as opposed to like the members of the smartocracy in Chicago, just want you out of town.
Don't listen to him.
I'm curious what Evan Moore has to say about this.
All right, so, and also, too, Ben may have lost the first half of his opening sentences in like 80% of his Chicago Reader columns in the last 8 years. Say what you will about Mayor Rahm, so that'll be gone. Oh, and
no, that was say what you will about Mayor Daley.
Oh, okay,
now I'll
so
be saying say what you will about Mayor Rahm. But I can't believe that that's a setup for Lori's doing something really bad. I cannot believe that Lori Lightfoot will be worse than Rahm Emanuel.
And it turns out a few Rahm staffers listen to the show, so we may be losing a few listeners there as well. Shout out to our Rahm staffer listeners, by the way.
Oh, yeah, they're always weighing in with a guest. Yeah.
Please, keep listening after the 20th. Please, we need the listeners. So with the few days we have left here, let's really lean into this, Ben, and read some more Mayor Rahm quotes. What do you say?
Mayor Rahm, you're always welcome to come on the show and defend your...
We did this yesterday after he spoke with Politico and gave everyone his non-requested wisdom on our Democratic governor's attempt at legalizing recreational cannabis in Illinois. Ben, what were your thoughts on that again?
Oh, Rahm is absolutely useless on the issue of legalizing reefer. And I'll put it to you this way. There is a ethical, moral reason why we should legalize marijuana. That is because our country has proved incapable of fairly applying the law to black people and white people. Black people go to jail for something that white people get to do with freedom. So if we have failed our ability to fairly police that the law against reefer, so therefore we lose our right to make it illegal. That is my position. Rahm was absent in the whole fight against the war on drugs. In fact, he was in the Clinton administration helping enact some of those draconian drug policy laws. So I believe that for Rahm to suddenly speak out and say, oh, we should go slow, we're going too fast, is beyond irony. It's cruel irony. The person, he was part of sort of the general war on drugs that has caused so much damage to this country for basically my entire adult lifetime. And so finally, as we see us ending the war on drugs, mercifully after all these years, well, not so fast. Let's keep that war going for a little while longer, please.
Well, today we have more from Rahm's Politico interview, and listen up, everyone, because he's going to tell us everything we didn't know about casinos in Chicago. And guys, it's literally the same thing he said about the cannabis bill. Tread carefully. Ben, what will we do without this guy?
Wow.
Tread carefully.
By the way, he was ready to set up a casino down on the southeast side in the, where was it, in the 10th Ward, Sue Garza's ward. He was talking about putting a casino there. And he wasn't treading carefully there. He was just waiting to get the permission from the governor.
We'll get there in moments.
Oh, I'm ahead of myself again.
The mayor reflected on past attempts to bring a casino to Chicago. In 2011, a newly elected Emanuel was aggressive in supporting casino legislation, only to see it held back when Governor Pat Quinn indicated he wouldn't sign it because it didn't offer enough regulation to protect taxpayers. In 2013, lawmakers hoping to generate revenue agreed on a new bill with more robust regulations, but Emanuel remembers Governor Quinn calling and asking if Chicago wanted to be part of the legislation. Emanuel said no, and Quinn ultimately vetoed the bill. Now, Ben, I have Rahm's response as to why he pulled back on the deal. I want you to tell us why you believe he did, but before I read it, first, let's face it, buddy, because you're younger days are way behind you. He's old, guys. I'm sure you remember all of this quite well. So tell us about Chicago's past attempts at getting a casino, and are you in favor for it?
Well, I have a lot of... Now, this is... Okay, folks. This is one of those of flying in the breeze moments for me. I'm not nearly as certain about legalizing gambling and promoting it throughout the city as I am in terms of legalizing a reefer. Gambling's a serious issue, folks. I actually believe that gambling is more destructive than marijuana use. Now, I know there's some people who wake up in the morning and immediately start baking their brain with marijuana.
Hi, guys. Name's Dennis. How's it going today?
But look, it's worked for you. You're the top of your profession.
I mean, I didn't say I just rode the bus here, but all right.
Okay. Was it the bus or the train?
Oh, the train, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I realize there are people who take the marijuana a little bit too far with the waking and the baking. I understand that. It can be problematic. I'm not saying you should just smoke from the moment you get up. Although I remember, what was that rock star's name? He was smoke. He'd get up and smoke.
Oh, rock star that smokes marijuana. You really narrowed the field.
Lenny Kravitz. That's who it was.
Okay.
He talked about it. And then he cut back, as I recall. Anyway, so I realized that you could overdo marijuana, but gambling's a serious problem. I mean, I know a lot of people who are like constantly, compulsively gambling, throwing away their money, and then they fall behind and they get into debt. So this notion that somehow or other gambling is a relatively benign vice, I think, is overplayed. And but for some reason, this would take a deep dive. I'm curious what Evan Moore thinks about this. I know he has theories on this. It seems that we are more accepting toward gambling as a vice than we are toward smoking marijuana. And there's got to be some kind of reason for that. I'm going to think about that before we go any further with it. But so in general, I think we should be a little cautious about promoting gambling the way they're talking about.
Oh, sounding like Mayor Rahm today. All right. Well,
no, he's sounding like me.
Tell us why he backed out in 2013.
I can't remember. 2013 or 2011?
Or 2011, 2013.
I can't remember. I'm sure whatever he says now will be a revisionistic approach on it.
I'll read the response.
Yeah.
Rom's response here.
Okay.
Remember, guys, he's smart, you're not. Okay, here we go. He says other programs in the city were starting to work. He said in a one-on-one interview with Politico, tourism numbers and conventions were on the rise. The economy was growing and the city was having success in attracting digital businesses. So we walked away from the table, Emmanuel said. We had it right there and we walked away.
You know what? That doesn't ring with my memory of it. And my memory is that it was a more complicated issue, that bringing gambling into Chicago offset a lot of other people who had other interests that wanted to keep gambling out of Chicago. And I also feel that there was connected to a property tax hike. This is off. And you know what? All that marijuana I smoked in the 80s is finally catching up to me. I can't remember. So I told you, don't just wake up and bake, folks. But you know what? We should bring Pat Quinn in here. We should bring Governor Pat Quinn and get...
That'd be good.
You know what, Pat? I know you're listening. We're going to get you on next week. We talk why we didn't get gambling in the 2011. Is Rahm making it up as he goes along, or is this time is he telling the truth?
Now that a Chicago casino has popped up again, Emmanuel hopes lawmakers put thought into where it might be located. I mean, at least for 4 more days. If we could put it miles from Indiana so people could stop there before heading to an Indiana casino. I could see value in that, Emmanuel said, but people in previous years were talking about the Loop and Michael Reese Hospital. Those locations have social implications.
What difference would it make if the gambling casino would be in Michael Reese, the old Michael Reese site? It would be in the Loop, or would be on the south side of Chicago in terms of social implications. I don't know what he's talking. I'm going to have Evan Moore is going to have to help me out with this one. Why would you, if you're against gambling, you're against gambling? How would it have greater social implications if you put the gambling casino in the Loop or in Michael Reese, which is just south of the Loop, folks, like on 35th Street, big plot of vacant land that the city owns because in its infinite wisdom, another smart mayor who had the council do whatever he wanted, bought up the land with your property tax dollars. That mayor would have been Mayor Daley in about 2008 or 7, I want to say. And now the land is just lying vacant. It's been vacant ever since, not producing any taxes. So I don't know what he's talking about there. But, Dean, now that I think about it, I seem to recall that Mayor Rahm wanted the gambling casino.
Look at that pot-addled brain working.
I'm battling fumes from 1980. All right, they're still in there.
All right, shout out to the live stream chat, by the way. Stephen weighed in. He said, from the Boston Globe, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio remains a big Red Sox fan. You should never abandon the team you grew up with for any reason, said de Blasio, March 2nd, 2019.
Thank you. Who said that?
Stephen.
Yep. Here, Stephen, we're going to send you some frozen steaks. They're in the mail right now.
No, you're not doing that.
But he's absolutely correct. De Blasio was a Red Sox. I knew that. Because I remember, like, he was pretending he was rooting for the Yankees when the Yankees played the Red Sox. That's a big rivalry. I know we're not allowed to talk sports on the Ben Joravsky Show, but that's a big rivalry.
Way to remember that, by the way. You hippie. All right. Now, just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on in Chicago, and now you will have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news?
All right. Well, let me tell you something, young man.
Okay.
Something that Bill de Blasio, something that Bill Buckner used to play first base for the Chicago Cubs, and something that Billy Conbear, a kid I went to grammar school with, all agree. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We got to have Evan Moore right here. We're going to bring him on when we return. Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Discover the breadth and majesty of Chicago's architecture on a Chicago Architecture Center bus tour. From bungalows to Bauhaus, our expert docents will share the fascinating stories behind our city's architecture. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a bus tour right now. Oh my, look at that wonderful piece of architecture.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed. We are live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Evan Moore is in the studio with me, editor for the Chicago Sun-Times. Evan Moore, the pride and joy of Morgan Park High School. And he has stopped by to join us. And Evan, first of all, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Welcome back. Glad to be back.
And I have to ask you, you're a bit of a sports fan, and generally Dennis won't allow me to talk about sports.
Make it quick, boys.
Man, are you a Bulls fan?
I think I still am. I'm more of a. It's my fandom is weird because I actually grew up more of a Lakers fan.
Did we have this conversation already? Were you a Kobe fan?
Nah, I'm a little older, so my like basketball experience was more so public league basketball because my mom and dad were public school teachers, so we went to a lot of those games. And the Lakers at the time when I was growing up, they still had Magic, Kareem, and Worthy, and AC Green, all those guys. So that was kind of my first basketball memories of sports weren't the Bulls, believe it or not.
So in 1991, when the Chicago Bulls played the Los Angeles Lakers for the World Championship, it was Magic versus Michael. Who did you root for?
I was Bulls by then already.
Okay. He jumped aboard that bandwagon.
It was Bulls already. Yeah, I was out there in the streets seeing some things I probably shouldn't have seen.
Wait, so. I think I saw you in the streets.
Like, what's he doing with that TV?
Yeah. Put that TV back, Evan Moore. So you were a Lakers fan, then the Bulls got hot, became a Bulls fan, and then the Bulls fell off, and you went back to the Lakers. Is that how you did it?
I stayed away from the Lakers. I mean, it was one of those things because, most of us who have a sports fandom is usually passed on from a parent or whomever. My dad was more so of a fans of individual players, so it wasn't like like some people in town were like, hey, this is GN, we're gonna listen to the Cubs and that's it. Or some of us who were like, hey, we're Sox fans and that's it. Like it never was like that for me. So I kind of picked up my fandom as I saw it.
Well, I was going to lament about how the Bulls and they have a lottery in the NBA, and the worse off you are, the worse you do. You're supposed to have a higher percentage chance of getting the highest draft choice, and the Bulls tanked this year, essentially trying to win the lottery and draft Zion Williamson, and it blew up. They got the 7th draft pick. As a Bulls fan, I was just moaning it. I heard it in the car, and I was like, "This stinks."
But he still was put the hat on today, so that's good.
You know what? I'm a beloved bull. I love my beloved bulls. So anyway, your parents are school teachers. I didn't know that. Where'd they teach?
They're both never out of retired now, but it's weird because we grew up in South Shore on the South Side, but they mostly taught at West Side schools. So my mom, she was elementary school mostly. So she, like most teachers in that area, you kind of bounced around. So she did what school was that? Lowell, Jensen, Johnson, which is why Douglas Park out the school he was at when he retired. But my daddy, he was a history teacher for a while. He was at the old Harrison High School, which is now Sausalito Little Village. Where else was he at? He was at Near North with the police facility right now, and a lot of community green kids went there back in the day. And
right.
Yeah, so he bounced around. They both bounced around like most educators. So yeah.
Well, I did not know that. My mother was a public school teacher as well. That's ancient history. Anyway, and before I asked you about gambling and marijuana. Talk about your podcast that you do. It's an interesting podcast.
Well, it's four of us, Jeff Beckham, Jabari Evans, Mario Gaze, and myself. It's called The Gold Defenders, and we're all relatively young black man who grew up on the south side of Chicago, and we wanted to change the narrative about the city. And it's kind of a takeoff the Chicago Defender, how that's looked in the black community, how we wanted to change the narrative. And we all come from different areas. Like, I'm a journalist. Jeff comes from the tech world, is an entrepreneur. Jabari, he has a rap career, but he also currently is a PhD student at Northwestern. And before he did that, he got his master's degree at USC. And Mario is an investor, but he also DJs on the side. So we pull in like a lot of different areas of what we saw growing up in the city. All of us we kind of go against the narrative of what people see about the city. Like, we're all highly educated, young man with a lot of influence collectively. And some of our topics we talked a lot about Nipsey Hussle in terms of his entrepreneurship, how a lot of people, especially here in the city, feel like that to make it or have something for yourself, they feel like you have to leave. Mm-hmm. A lot of people do indeed leave, and that's kind of goes into what we see about the city's black population, how it kind of, dwindled. And we talk a lot about white flight, but there's been a lot of black flight too. And and we talked about the college admissions exam scandal, because Jeff went to Mizzou. Jabari, like I said, went to Penn for his undergrad, and then went to USC, and I mentioned, and also Mario, he went to University of Chicago. So that was one of the episodes that I kind of fell back on, because they had a lot of feelings about that. They weren't surprised all that went down. They saw it when they were there. So that was a pretty interesting episode. But we pretty much go all over the gamut, and I think it's a pretty interesting show that anyone can get something out of.
Yeah, the Nipsey Hussle that Evan alluded to, for some of our older listeners, he was just murdered in Los Angeles. He was born in, I don't know if he was born in Los Angeles, but he grew up in Los Angeles. He's a rapper. He was just shot down. But he was well-to-do. He was successful. He came back, or he never left Los Angeles, and had played a pivotal role in developing a business. Was always trying to encourage entrepreneurs, etc., and to stay in Chicago, to stay in the neighborhood that they're from originally. You talk about changing the narrative that exists regarding black people or young black men in Chicago. What is that narrative, in your opinion?
That we're scary, that we have multiple kids, that we have jail stints, and we're just a blight on our communities, and it's not the case. And it's kind of all of us, when we all leave the city, we go to different places. You tell people, hey, I'm from Chicago. They have their various things that they've heard, and you've seen over the years when Republican or conservative talking point to say, what about Chicago, this and that. Like, I feel like, just cut down to it. You're saying black people. Let's not mess around. It's something that I've noticed over the years, and when I travel and go different places, and you see it, you hear it, and you see that narrative, and that narrative does wear on all of us. And it's not a thing whereas we want to think to be this way. It's just how in many places how things are, and you hear a lot of things about lack of resources and things like that, and that kind of leads into what we've been saying about what our mayor has been doing on his way out, is changing his narrative, and a lot of people in town, especially brown and black folks, are like, whoa, hold up, pump your brakes. We know, we've seen it. I mean, that's why, that's one of the things where we're trying to change the narrative. In many cases, you can't sit around and wait for people to change the narrative. You have to step up and do it yourself.
Yeah, well, part of that narrative, we'll get into Rahm's narrative. I'm going to write that down. Rahm rewriting history as he leaves office. This is a particular obsession of mine, Evan. And to the narrative that you were just alluding to, I saw this article in the paper the other day. Follow me on this. The people who run Trump Tower, the big tower in downtown Chicago with Trump's name on it, which I'd like to point out that the city gave him the okay after he donated $50,000 to Mayor Rahm's campaign. I'd just like to point that out, Evan. Anyway, one of the narratives that they're putting out, their business is not doing well there, apparently. They're not booking a lot of guests. And so they put the narrative, I'm not making this up, I saw this in the article, in the paper, that it's because of the crime in Chicago.
Yeah, I saw that.
You saw that?
Yes,
They're blaming crime in Chicago. First of all, it's not in a high crime area, number one, and there's a lot of hotels that are booking up and doing really well. It's probably because you put that big Trump name on the side of the building and people hate Trump in the city of Chicago. But it doesn't stop them from essentially, as you said, blaming black people for their inability to run a good business.
Yeah, because the thing is, for me, and I understand why the building is there and everything else. He's a businessman just like anyone else. So he should be able to have it. But at the same time, if he really, all the stuff he says about Chicago, where it's backhanded comments, he'll say stuff about shootings, then he'll say, make America great again, and everything else. Well, if you really want to do that, you provide the communities that need it some sort of infrastructure. Why isn't there some type of Trump business in North Lawndale or in South Shore or East or anything like that? So it's one of the things where he's telling some folks things they want to hear. And Chicago has always been used as a punching bag for conservatives one way or another. And it didn't really start till Obama came around, and you kind of saw how they were kind of looking at him as like the quote unquote machine candidate. But you remember in that Senate run, the machine wanted Dan Hines. So that's something that people like. When you kind of get into this thing where they feel like that you're right-ish, and if you already look at someone a certain way or you have a specific political leaning, you're gonna believe whatever you're told, even if something is clearly wrong. If it sounds right, then most likely it is right in those people's eyes.
Evan, we were talking. I was a little bit about Rahm trying to rewrite his narrative, trying to control his narrative, and he too has a podcast. So he is trying to do it his way. As he leaves, in your mind, what do you think Rahm's legacy is? Not the narrative that he's writing, but just in your mind as a person who was raised in the city of Chicago, lived here your whole life, has been writing about Chicago. What's your sense of Rahm's legacy?
I would say it depends who you talk to. It's for some, it's him trying to make up for some of the stuff Daley had done. For some people, it's petty and messy for some folks. And the thing is that I remember one time an alderman telling me about Rahm, and he was like, yeah, he's for downtown, but not for the neighborhoods. And you look at my neighborhood, I mean, we were the last neighborhood to get a supermarket after Dominic left. Some places got a Whole Foods, some places got a Mariano's. I mean, next door to us in Hyde Park, they had a Treasure Island, and now they're getting a Trader Joe's. And that whole time when we were like wanted a store, they got a Target, they got a Whole Foods, they got a Mariano's that was in a nearby neighborhood, but they got all this stuff they didn't ask for, and people in South Shore was like, can we have a store? A store, and they finally got one, but it took a while. But it just goes to show you, like, when some people in this city, they have to beg for things, and other folks, they get things without even asking for them. And that's where the thing with two Chicagos. But I say all that to say that the legacy of Rahm Emanuel concerning a lot of black and brown folks is, and he didn't have his hand out when he needed to have it out. And when he had his hand out, it was for quote unquote 1% folks and people who had money.
The grocery store that Evan is alluding to, I believe, is 72nd and Jeffrey. It's in South Shore. It was a Treasure Island, was it?
It was the Dominic's.
Dominic's, my bad. Yeah, and went out of business a long time ago and was vacant. And the local alderman, Leslie Hairston, was always saying that Rahm was, well, she said this more than once, that Rahm, in her humble opinion, was punishing her for no votes that she took in the city council. I'm not quite sure I believe that. I believe the mayor, somebody had come to him and said, hey, I want to put a grocery store, to take to where the old Dominic's is. He would have said, sure, I'll get just as long as you give me the credit for it. But he obviously didn't push really hard. He didn't put that at the top of his list of priorities to get a grocery store in that area.
Right, and you saw what's going on in Willon with that jewel that's being over there. And people in certain areas of the city are rightfully, historically skeptical because they're mostly thinking, is this for us or for the people that's going to be here after we're pushed out one way or another? And, hey, you saw Maya's story. That's my home zip code. So, yeah, and Maya's story in the Reader in Pangea about Pangea. That's their office is actually on my mom and dad's block. So we see them and they take up all the parking spaces. That's another issue for another day. So a lot of people are angry about that. But yeah, so you have that going on. Then you have the Obama Library, and then you have the combination of Tiger Woods' golf course with the Jackson Park golf course. So there's a lot of stuff going on in our neighborhood, and we always looked at ourselves as like a hidden gem. Like people, when I have friends come over, like, hey, this is where I live, check it out, and you're like, wow, I didn't know this was in the city. Because some parts of South Shore, you just like, you think it's in the suburbs or a foreign land, and you're just like, well, we've been here. So I definitely see where things are happening over there, where Hyde Park has gotten more and more expensive, and those folks got to live somewhere. So they're gonna be coming to South Shore, and it's always been interesting with that. When they tore down the projects, a lot of those folks moved into South Shore, and that caught a lot of people butted heads from folks who were in the projects, and some people were like, well, they brought their habits with them, and we're like, middle class black folk, this and that, and it was kind of like, it was a lot of butting heads. Still is in many areas.
Yeah, South Shore is the neighborhood for folks who are geographically challenged, just south of Hyde Park, which is about 5,500. There's Hyde Park, 5,500 south from the Loop, along the lake. So it's beautiful lakefront property. There's a book that's coming out, Carlo Rotella, who will be a guest on our show. It's called "The World Is Always Coming to an End," and it's about South Shore. And my sense is, Evan, I'll get your thoughts on this, that eventually the gentrification that has been moving south from the Loop, pretty steady pace for the Daley years and the Rahm years, so it's like planning decisions that both mayors have signed on to, will eventually, it's already been in Hyde Park, will eventually go south of that, South Shore, maybe Englewood if you're going further west. What's your sense of that? What's your sense of the changes ahead for South Shore?
Well, I'll take it back to Carlo's book, and the name of the book is from a person who lived in South Shore, who was a business owner, and saying always the world's always coming to an end. It goes to when different ethnic groups move into an area, and the group that was there previously are obviously worried because the group has moved in. The South Shore, obviously, Native Americans, then the Irish, and then the Jews came, and then black people started coming. So each group was kind of like, who was there previously was kind of like, uh-oh, what's going on here? And a lot of people in South Shore had those same fears that white people had when black people started moving in. So it's that's why the book is the name of it, and why he picked that title with that quote or whatever is pretty interesting, because that's kind of what happens. And you see it in different neighborhoods over the city when a group that was there before, started noticing that another ethnic group or another group comes in, they're kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? But you also have folks who aren't immigrants in a classic sense. They're transplant. They're from, some of the towns and states that, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, that are coming in. And it's a different type of immigration I think people are looking at, because kind of like, even when I think about it, like a lot of even black people I know that move here from other places, most of them aren't on the south side. They're mostly north side. And that kind of goes into what people goes into what we talked about narrative. When someone wants to move here, where they're hearing about certain neighborhoods. And for me, like, if you were looking for like Chirac and you came to where I grew up, you'd be very disappointed. It's completely quiet. I mean, so you'd be disappointed if you want that the narrative that some folks have been seeing.
Speaking of narratives and people's impressions of Chicago, there's a TV show right now that's centered in Chicago. I think it's heading in its third year. Don't quote me on that. And The Chi, it takes place on the South Side. I've not seen episodes after the first year, but what's your general sense of how The Chi fits into this whole narrative framework that you've been talking about?
Well, I kind of watch all those shows and kind of like in a sense like to not only critique them but to enjoy them, because you have that. You have Easy, who's on Netflix, and you have Red Line that's on, and obviously the Chicago NBC shows, Fire and PD and all those shows. So I think Chicagoans, I mean, I understand when some people were like, for instance, on The Chi, like I remember that one kid was like on 79th Street, and then around the corner he was in front of the Rainbow Club, and you're just like, wait a minute, that's you train in Village, and all of a sudden you were just in Chatham, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Like, so I think a lot of people, I think the current group of shows are doing a pretty good job of capturing the essence of Chicago, because Chicago people are involved. It's Chicago actors, it's Chicago producers, and then also the thing about the actors, a lot of these folks are from here, and that goes into what I was saying earlier about people feeling like they have to leave to make it out, and a lot of those people are staying. You see a lot of the same actors on all different platforms that are on these shows that are from here. So I think that's good that people are working, but they're also staying here in the neighborhood. So there's some things on the show that, I was personally like, yo, that's dope, because I may have personally been through it, or somebody I knew, and some of the story angles, but it's interesting shows that I suggest people they should watch it. I think they should watch it.
No, but I know what you're saying about when somebody gets on a train and the next thing you know, they're in a completely different neighborhood. Hey, that doesn't happen in that. Yeah, it's the convenience of the storytelling that and not the accuracy. Before I let you go, I get your general thoughts on the efforts by the state of Illinois, the governor, and the Democrats in the legislature to legalize marijuana. And what do you think about that? It's good, bad? You for it, against it? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think back to a story I covered back when I was like freelancing for the Daily Southtown. I was in Worth, and where Worth is, one of the suburbs here in the city, and this town was weighing the option of having a dispensary there. So
for medical marijuana?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So some people thought it was going to be, reefer madness. You bring this to town, crime is going to follow, or it's, this typical stuff. And some other people were just like, look, this is something that's needed. And I remember a woman who had cancer got up and told the town board, like, look, I buy weed from a drug dealer because it helps me. Like this is someone that's in a criminal in the classic sense. This is a sick woman who uses marijuana to help her out. And I think about other areas in the city too, where you bring it, and people are like, no, but you have 1 million liquor stores in your neighborhood. So it's like, what are you thinking? And for me, I had an opinion. I feel like whatever people feel like they can handle in their neighborhoods, they should be able to have. But obviously, there's things that go along with it, with marijuana, and also there's an issue like people across the board generally use it, whether it's like economics, race, location, whatever. But who gets arrested for it? Mostly black people. And you watch all these guys doing these dispensaries and making money off of it, but you see your cousin in jail who just had a dime bag, or you're just like, well, how is this? What did my cousin do that this guy isn't doing? Like, is doing, and vice versa. So you just kind of look at it where it's like, if this can help people, if it can help people and people can make some money off of it, and you see in the city here with systemic solutions and divestment being on purpose. I mean, so it's what do you expect people to do?
I agree 100%. If your cousin's in jail for doing something that somebody else is making millions of dollars of, there's something wrong right there and then. And finally, gambling. General thoughts about gambling. Are you just open-minded, just put the casinos in, or are you a little concerned like I am?
I'm for something that's legal that makes money, but at the same time, there should be some type of parameters on it. We'll see that out that go, and it's also I basically have this similar opinion of legalizing marijuana. You know, it's if there's the way to make things legal, but at the same time, when you go to places like Las Vegas, and you see like signs all over the place telling people like, hey, if you got a problem, you need to go see somebody type of thing, and I don't know, it's gonna turn out like Reefer Madness or Crime Alley, where all this crime is going to flow into a specific area if they have a casino. So I get that kind of remains to be seen.
Evan Moore is his name. He's an editor of the Chicago Sun-Times. Before I let you get out the door, Evan, tell folks one more time about your podcast, where they can check it out.
Also, you can check it out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all the Sporter, I think it's called, and it's the Go Defenders. You can either Google us or find it on, or subscribe on all those platforms I named. It's a really good podcast. I'm not saying that because I'm biased. I'm saying that you're going to learn a lot about the city from guys who came from same area, but basically like different life experiences. And I think it's a really good show, and we're lining up guests, so people should check it out.
All right, very good, Evan Moore. Thanks so much for coming on. And we have Kim Ortiz on deck. She's ready to go. We're going to bring her on when we return.
Cirque du Soleil's Big Top comes back to Chicago with its latest show, Volta. Venture into a captivating voyage of discovery inspired by the adventurous spirit of freedom, where a surge of action sparks a high-voltage journey. Volta. Playing May 18th through July 6th under the Big Top at Soldier Field. Tickets at CirqueDuSoleil.com. Volta thanks their partners Hennessy Black and Champagne Nicolas Fayette.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. See the city from a whole new angle on a Chicago Architecture Center tour. With more than 85 tours to choose from, there are endless stories to discover. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm on a tour. Oh my, what magnificent architecture! Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
All right, everybody, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for, what is today? Thursday, May 16th is moments away. But before we get into that, we would like to thank the following unions once again for bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. You guys are awesome. First up, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Big thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. You people are awesome. And thank you once again to our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Thursday, May 16th. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we welcome union woman Kim Ortiz. And it's Nicole Cantello, president of the American Federation of Government Employees. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Benny J. Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Kim Ortiz is in the studio. Nicole Cantello is on her way to the studio. Lots of union people coming through the studio today on Thursday. Kim Ortiz from Local 150, Operating Engineers. And we're going to have a conversation with Kim about union issues, politics, her life, all kinds of things on the agenda. Before we do that, you got an update for me, young man?
Absolutely. We have a hefty amount of updates involving our mayor-elect this afternoon. Only 4 more days until Lori Lightfoot is our mayor, and this week she has been hustling, buddy. Lightfoot has announced several staffing picks Wednesday night among her core team of advisors, including 2 former members of that police accountability task force that she once headed. Now, to be honest, a lot of these names are unrecognizable, so be a bit boring if all we did was say the names and Ben just goes, who?
Maybe I'll know the names. I haven't seen the names. This is
I don't
like,
know.
whoa,
Well,
this is called improv, baby.
And we got to keep you people entertained, all right? So go find the names of those people at chicago.suntimes.com. But luckily, Lori Lightfoot shared with us today her to-do list as mayor in her first 100 days. So let's find out a couple of these. And it's time for a segment that we call Lori's List.
Okay.
I couldn't think of anything better.
Okay, it's good enough. That's a good one.
That'll work. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times in the one and only Fran the Woe Man Spielman. We'll only read a couple now, and we'll do a few more later, all right? Lori Lightfoot has a list of things that she wants to get done in the first 100 days as mayor. Let's find out number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1, keep Chicago safe and young people occupied by flooding the zone over Memorial Day weekend. The quote-unquote zone.
Yeah, the zone.
The zone.
Yeah. Which zone is she talking about? It doesn't say.
Just
the
quote,
zone.
flooding the zone. All right, let's do number 2.
Oh, wait, no. But number 1 is pretty important. I just didn't know what zone she's talking about, but whatever. Okay, number 2.
Number 2, prepare a budget that's certain to include painful cuts and tax increases to satisfy a $277 million spike in pension payments and a budget shortfall more, quote, dire than she anticipated.
Yeah, more dire. Well, we all knew that was coming. We were having a deeper dive in budget issues. By the way, the first thing on the agenda, I give her credit, is very important. Try to figure out a strategy that combines effective policing, smart policing, with jobs and activities that will keep people off the streets and from shooting each other. If you can figure out any way to do that, that's a great idea. In terms of the budget, every time a new mayor comes in, this is common practice, folks, the new mayor suddenly discovers, oh my God, outrageous. The budget deficit is much worse than anybody led us to believe. That's because the old mayor is usually trying to undersell the budget deficit to show what a great guy he was. In this case, Mayor Rahm has been trotting around town for the last how many months now, ever since he announced he wasn't running, going, I'm a great guy. I figured out how to balance a budget. I did the hard lifting and that the other people wouldn't do and raised the taxes, and now we have a balanced budget. Well, it turns out that you didn't do enough of the heavy lifting, and the lifting that you did, you started late, and as a result, and then the real heavy lifting, you passed on to the next person. In football, they call that, Dennis, a punt.
Oh, my.
You punt
Thank
the
you
ball.
so much.
Yeah, football strategy. You
35 years old, I never knew what a punt was. Thank you.
That is a punt.
Thank you.
So you punt to the next person, this case, Lori Lightfoot. So, when Rahm came in, oh my God, the budget deficit is worse than anything that Richard Daley ever told me. But I'm a genius and I'll figure it out. Now that Rahm's leaving,
it worked on me. Rahm seems all right now. I don't know why. In the last few months, I'm like, you know what? He's not so bad. All right, so we did number 1, keep Chicago safe. Number 2, prepare a budget. Coming up a little later, you don't need to be a Dan Biss to figure this out. It's
number 3.
That'll be at like 30
minutes
or so.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to number 3. Anyway, Kim Ortiz is my guest. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you letting me fill in last minute for Ed. They're pretty, quite literally, big shoes to fill. So
He's a big guy.
Yeah, I hope I can do a good job for him.
The great Ed Maher. I will not do my Ed Maher imitation.
Please don't.
Okay, sorry. Hey, Ben. It's got those pipes.
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So, Kim Ortiz, tell just your first time on the show. Tell folks a little bit about yourself from Chicago.
Yeah, I was actually born in Houston. I was raised on the northwest side of Chicago, Logan Square area. Then I went to DePaul for undergrad and worked way more internships and jobs than I can even remember, and ended up seeing when I graduated that 150 was looking for a communications person, and I had no idea what the operating engineers did or what they were, so I stumbled upon this by dumb luck. And I think I grew up, my dad's like a hardcore union guy also. He's been a Teamster my whole life. And so I grew up in this bubble thinking that like people liked unions and people supported unions. And this was something that everyone believed in, good wages and financial security, and just learning every day that is not the reality.
Wait, we'll get into people's attitudes toward unions, and yes, it's always a struggle, particularly in this day and age with Donald Trump as our president. And then coming out of Bruce Rauner as our governor. Good God! But so wait, so you grew up in Logan? What high school did you go to?
I didn't go to high school in the city. I went to St. John Birchman's growing up, and Pritzker over in Wicker Park. I bounced around at different CPS schools, but then in high school, my dad, being a Teamster, he ended up getting transferred. So I lived in Hinckley, Illinois, which has like 2,000 people, and they're probably all related.
Wait, time.
We got to keep our Hinckley listeners.
Hey, Hinckley.
Right?
That was Kim who said that. I didn't say anything bad about
Thank
Hinckley.
you.
Hinckley, Illinois. Excuse my utter ignorance about Illinois geography.
Sure.
Where is Hinckley?
Hinckley is if you follow 290 until it becomes 88, and then you follow that until it becomes Route 30, Illinois. It's like 20 minutes directly west of Aurora.
Oh, did you know that, Dee?
No.
Yeah, I lived there for 4 years, and it was like discovering a new world. So.
And so then, as soon as you could, you moved back to Chicago.
Sure did.
Nothing wrong with Hinckley, all right? Some of her best years were spent in Hinckley. So you came back to Chicago and DePaul, and you went to work for Local 150. Do you have any involvement in Chicago politics at all?
Just a lot of volunteering on campaigns. I've never worked for a campaign. I always found politics fascinating. I think that's why I ended up at 150, and I still do a lot of volunteer work today, but no, not yet.
Well, one of the things I've noted, and I was talking to Ed Maher about this, it's sort of one of our favorite topics, is that your generation seems to be, and may be wrong about this, correct me if I am, more open-minded about unions than people who are older than you. I can go on and on about how there was this hostility to the unions that goes back to roughly 1980. This is way before you were born, when 81, I think it was, when Ronald Reagan closed down the PATCO strike. And really just, I think it was really downhill for unions for about 10 years after that. But what's your sense about how your generations, I'm presuming you're a millennial.
Yes,
okay.
correct.
And I'm of the millennial persuasion. So what's your sense of how your peers view unions?
Yeah, I think union support fluctuates with the economy, and that makes sense because when wages are down, people support unions, and when wages are up, people don't see the need. But I think that, there's studies that show that 68% of millennials and Gen Z after us, they support unions and they believe in the things that they do, and there's just this growing number of people my age who are coming into a world with far less job opportunities, and the jobs that are offered, they're what's called underemployed because they're working gigs or they're working jobs that don't even require a degree. And it's devastating when you've been pushed into college and told not to go to trade school and to get a degree and get a master's, and then you come out and just the opportunities are not there because employers are less and less likely to provide full-time jobs with benefits and financial security. So what places like my organization, Local 150, does is remind people that you don't have to go to college to get a good paying job. And I think that they see that they can earn an honest day's pay for an honest day's work and have financial security without having to get into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, like I did. So it's like if I would have known about apprenticeships before I went to college, I think I would have taken a very different route.
What was your major, you said?
Public relations.
Public relations.
Yeah.
So in other words, to pay for your DePaul degree, you had to take out loans.
Yeah, a lot of them.
And you're still paying them back.
I'll probably pay them until I retire.
All right.
If I'm lucky.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you this question. I'm asking you this of Kim Ortiz, the human being, not Kim Ortiz who works for Local 150. So this is Kim speaking from her heart. All right.
My opinions only.
Your opinions only. This has been on my mind ever since. Some of the Democratic candidates for president have been proposing to wash away debt that college students have for their college educations going forward, to have subsidized tuition at public schools. I'm a big favor of this, for the record. The mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, is running, raises a different point of view, and he thinks that it's unfair if the government subsidizes the tuition of people who go to college because they make more money. So effectively, you're getting people who don't make a lot of money to subsidize the incomes of people who do make more money. I completely disagree with him on that point. What is your opinion about this, Kim? You're facing a great debt. Many of your friends are probably facing great college debt. Do you think it's better for society if we help students with college loans, that we make higher education accessible to people?
I think that we fund K through 12, but it could go a little higher than that. And we certainly have the possibility. And I think that most of the people in my age and in my circles think that it's absurd that we go through so many loops, and then when we finally get the degree, we're in a position where if we don't pay it, that's the one thing that if we file for bankruptcy, we'll never get forgiven. And I just think about, like, I can never die, or because my parents will get all my loans. And it's traumatizing. And just the reality of the gig economy, it's not fair to people who have come into a very different world of war and recession, and that's all we've ever known, to expect us to be able to afford a very good education. And then we're not treated as an investment. We're not treated as someone who wants to stay in Chicago and buy a home here. It's when we don't fund higher education, then we can't give people my age all of the crap that we give them for not being able to put more money into the tax base in the form of income taxes and in the form of property taxes. Because I know a lot of people my age who would love to buy a home, and it's just never going to be a reality.
Yeah, no, that's a whole other issue, affordability issue of housing. But yeah, particularly you're coming out of college, you got this enormous debt. Housing prices are outrageous. They don't really bear any relationships to people's ability to pay for the housing if you want to live in Chicago anyway.
But my student loans are the same cost as my mortgage, so it's like I have two homes.
Wow, you're paying two homes off at the same time. So I would like to expand it. So for instance, job training programs to get apprentice degrees, what you're talking about, to get into get good union jobs, get training. I would subsidize that. I'd rather do that than pay for a war in Iran or a war in Iraq.
Yeah, we're pushing. Speaking for 150 again.
Okay, now
yeah.
The Kim Ortiz hat is off, and now she's 150.
We're pushing. We put out commercials. We're trying to get more women, more people of color. We want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to avoid debt if they can and take the apprenticeship route, because I think a lot of people in Illinois, college is just not the route for them, and that's okay. And if we can get them into positions where they're making that honest day's pay, honest day's pay for an honest day's work, and having the financial security of a pension and getting good health care, I think that they value all of those things, and that's why union favorability is rising in my generation, because we see the value of it, and we see the things that they're pushing for, even if it's something that is unpopular to a lot of people, like an infrastructure bill, because I'm 26, and in my entire lifetime, the gas tax hasn't risen a half a penny. And so as much as we see them fighting for these things, it's just going to keep pushing union favorability in my generation and in younger generations. They might not know what it is, but the second they find out and what we're fighting for every day, they get it immediately.
All right, there's two topics that I want to talk about with you. One is that infrastructure bill, funding infrastructure improvements in the state of Illinois, and the other has to do with the gig economy. You referred to both. Let's start with the infrastructure first. Tell folks what they need to know about this issue.
Yeah, so Senator Sandoval introduced infrastructure bill, Senate Bill 103, and it's proposing raising the gas tax and raising registration fees. And like I said, gas taxes haven't been raised in my lifetime, so it's crazy to think that we expect to provide safe roads and protect not only the safety of ourselves and our children, but the economy in Illinois without having bridges that people can cross and roads that people can drive on. And we obviously sponsor that. We think that it would create not only safety and security for a lot of people and the economy here in Illinois, but it would create generations of, especially as our union is becoming more diverse, it would create generations of wealth for people and financial security for them. Just in the capital, if a capital plan was passed, the years of work that would create would be incredible. And so we support the bill, and we hope it gets through.
Is there much resistance right now?
I think it's the usual bunch that claim that they are sticking up for the working class, but I think the reality is that if they supported the working class, they would want this plethora of jobs to fund our economy and to create opportunities outside of college and the debt that they would incur there, to have a great career that isn't relying on gimmicks like gambling and marijuana. As much as people want those things, that's great. We should have them, but we should also make sure that that's not how we're funding infrastructure. We're creating long-term sustainable funding for that. And I think that that's what the opposition is opposed to. They don't want to see these things passed, because then that would mean that they're just all scared of taxes.
Well, I know there's just a general revulsion to any form of taxation, which is really difficult to understand since we have to figure out some way, as you pointed out, to fix a bridge that's falling apart, or a viaduct that's falling apart, or roads that are falling apart. I ride my bike here the last couple days. Damon Avenue is just one giant pothole. Hey, infrastructure bill, Sandoval, get some of that money to fix up Damon Avenue while you're at it. It's Martin Sandoval from the Southwest side. But anyway, there's always going to be some opposition. So my hope is that this bill would directly earmark the money, the revenue, to infrastructure. Because in the past, money just gets absorbed by the state, and that feeds all kinds of cynicism on the part of taxpayers, because they don't know what exactly their money is going to.
Yeah, I mean, we put in the back end work on that as well, making sure that we created that lockbox, and we supported that, because we get it. Like, it's frustrating when you put all of this money, you pay all of this money in taxes, and you drive or bike around and you're not seeing where it's going, and something so basic as not having 50 potholes in front of your house. And so we created the lockbox to make sure that the money that's there for infrastructure goes to infrastructure, and specifically like the registration fees, if those were increased, those would go specifically to transit. And a lot of people in Chicagoland rely on that to get to work every day. So if we're not funding transportation through something like an increased registration fee, then how will people get to work, and how will people get to work safely? I can't imagine not being able to take, I live off of the Green Line and the Blue Line, and if neither of those were funded or safe to take, I think it would severely disrupt the economy. And it's just irresponsible to act like we shouldn't take action.
Yeah. So this is a bill that's in the Senate right now, did you say? Hasn't? I don't think it's gone to the House yet, has it? I just don't know off the top of my head.
You know, we were talking about there's this like very similar bill that popped up in the House, but we're supporting the one in the Senate, which was proposed by Senator Sandoval.
All right, Martin Sandoval, Southwest Side. And finally, we get to the issue of the gig economy. A couple days ago, the National Labor Relations Board, in its infinite wisdom, their lawyer, the chief counsel for the National Labor Relations Board, decided that Uber drivers who were trying to unionize were not eligible for collective bargaining. They didn't have collective bargaining rights because they were entrepreneurs. I'm paraphrasing this lawyer's argument that entrepreneurs and essentially are business partners, if you will, of Uber. I thought it was the most ludicrous interpretation of anything resembling reality, as though an Uber driver has any control over the business practices of Uber. So to think that that person is sort of like designing Uber policy and therefore is ineligible to bargain with Uber bosses for a higher raise, in my humble opinion, Kim, is just an attempt to keep Uber drivers from forming a union. What's your thoughts on this?
It's terrifying. When I read about it, it's not only is it's just like blatant disrespect, because you're not an employee, therefore they won't even recognize them as an employee. That's just crazy to me. But what's terrifying is that memo that was put out by the NLRB is going to inform future cases. And the fact that there's at least 23% of people who are currently in full-time jobs plan to leave for a gig job in the next 5 years, not including the people who already rely on gig jobs full-time because they haven't been able to find a full-time job with benefits, that they're relying on this memo by the NLRB that will inform future cases. And they're essentially saying, we're deciding now that you are not real employees and you will not be able to collectively bargain, and you're just going to have to take those jobs that have no financial security and no benefits and no health care and deal with it. And when 94% of all of the recent new jobs that have been created are gig economy jobs and not full-time jobs with benefits, that's the scary part, because we're creating this really terrifying future for people my age and Gen Z beneath me.
Let's just think about what we've reviewed for people your age. One, there will be no assistance for college. You're going to have to take on loans to pay for your college education. And when you get out of school, you're facing $50,000 to $100,000, $200,000, whatever it is, in debt. Two, we didn't even talk about health care. Health care, the Republicans are trying to get rid of Obamacare, so there's not going to be health care. And three, you won't be able to find a job that pays all the benefits, so you get a gig economy job, and you can't collect
2 or 3 of those.
2 or 3 of those. But you're entrepreneurs, you're
that's
business partners with the leaders of Uber, and so you can't collectively bargain to negotiate with them. So they're basically telling your generation, they're giving you the big middle finger to your generation.
Well, they tell us we're lazy. That's the real issue. And I know everyone that I went to school with was working, going to school full time, had an internship or two, paid, unpaid, trying to just eat every night. Like, we would all go to student events just to eat because we could barely make the money to pay our rent. And then when we get out of college and think, okay, this is what all these years of work was for, many of us enter jobs that don't even require degrees and just pay wages that can barely support our loans.
That's Kim Ortiz talking about. By the way, the other interesting thing I should point out to all of my brothers and sisters who are in unions who voted for Donald Trump, the National Labor Relations Board appointee. These are appointees by the president, and so they tilt this very important board against unions. So it's just something to think about, folks. You go to vote, it's not just which president tweets the best or which president comes up with the funniest line that really tickles your fancy. These presidents make appointments. They control all kinds of rules and regulations that govern your life that you're probably not even aware of. And all of a sudden, you're an Uber driver and you can't organize a union, and so you're just screwed. It goes back to who's our president.
Elections have consequences, and this NLRB is a direct result of that election. And I mean, I won't be doom and gloom the whole time. I think that when I was reading about Uber, what was refreshing to me was that there was a spokeswoman in California, I believe, who said they're not going to recognize us as a union, but that doesn't mean we can't act like one. And we saw them come together in a strike, and we saw some people saying, oh, they're not union. What do they expect? Like, they're going to get treated like that. But it's so good to see this. We're in the midst of this like strike wave, and it's so encouraging to see people finally acting against corporate interest and the special interest money that is working against us. But we're getting collective, and we're working together, and I feel optimistic despite, the list of.
All right, let's end the interview on an optimistic point of view. And there's also a presidential election right down the road. Maybe there'll be a change in administration, and some of these appointees, will be replaced by others who are more sympathetic to Uber drivers and Lyft drivers, et cetera. By the way, I don't know if you saw this, but Uber's stock went up like 3% after this ruling came out. So, wow. Yeah, I know. I've probably plummeted since then.
That's good after the disappointing IPO.
Yeah, that's right. A disappointing IPO. Hey, well, boost it up by screwing your workers even more than you're already doing. Kim Ortiz, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You did a great job. We have Nicole Cantello on deck. We're going to bring her on when we return.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now. Oh, wow, look at that building.
At Chicagoland Cremation Options, we are committed to listening, educating, and guiding your family through the cremation process. Whether it is time of death or when planning your wishes for the future, Chicagoland Cremation Options can accommodate you at an affordable price and with great dignity. Avoid funeral home costs with direct access to a crematory for a cremation. Chicagoland Cremation Options, just south of O'Hare, 5 minutes west of Chicago. It's a family-owned business and operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Visit it at ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Cirque du Soleil's Big Top comes back to Chicago with its latest show, Volta. Venture into a captivating voyage of discovery inspired by the adventurous spirit of freedom, where a surge of action sparks a high-voltage journey. Volta. Playing May 18th through July 6th under the Big Top at Soldier Field. Tickets at CirqueDuSoleil.com. Volta thanks their partners Hennessy Black and Champagne Nicolas Fayette.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed. We are live from the Chicago Sun-Times, and Kim Ortiz has left the building. But
Hi, Kim.
Nicole Cantello is here. We also have a little farewell to say to Miles, but before we do that, what do you have for me, young man?
Oh, only 4 more days until Lori Lightfoot becomes mayor, and Lori Lightfoot shared with us today her to-do list as mayor in her first 100 days. All right, we went through the first 2.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right, and I believe that was safety in Chicago, keep Chicago safe, and prepare a budget that's certain to include painful cuts and tax increases to satisfy a $277 million spike in pension payments.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I guess it's Now time for number 3.
Number 4.
Oh, my goodness, number 3.
Number 3.
Get with it.
Come on, you know
My
Dan
goodness.
Best.
I'm slacking here. My goodness, getting my 4s and 3s mixed up. All right, we're on to number 3 here. And number 3 is build more affordable housing to stem Chicago's population losses.
Wow. All right. Good luck with that one. We were just talking about with Kim Ortiz how expensive housing is in the city of Chicago and how difficult it is for people of her generation, millennials, etc., to buy a house in Chicago, buy a condo in Chicago. And Mayor Rahm left office with 2 humongous TIF deals subsidizing the construction of upscale housing in already gentrifying areas that will force up property taxes and force up housing costs, folks. So as Mayor Rahm is leaving, he's probably not telling you this as he's on his self-congratulation, pat myself on the back tour. He is fueling the very gentrification that Lori Lightfoot is saying, I want to hold off a little bit. So it'll be interesting if she could sort of turn these tides. Look, this is a byproduct of planning by the city of Chicago that's been going on since the 90s, folks. It's not an accident that this has happened. People thought this was a good idea, and they've doubled down on it during the Rahm years, the 8 years of Rahm. We'll see what Lori can do to stem this tide.
So there you are. We're reading the list of things that Lori Lightfoot, her to-do list as our first 100 days as mayor. We did number 3, build more affordable housing to stem Chicago's population losses. Let's do one more. Big voice guy. Don't mess it up this time.
Number 4.
Thank you. Thank you. Bring equity to an overly punitive ticketing policy.
Oh, my God.
That has unfairly targeted minority motorists and forced thousands into bankruptcy.
Oh, don't get me started on this. I could go on and on. You think Nicole is... We're going to get started on what the EPA is doing to its employees and the environment, but I could go on and on what mayors have done to working people and poor people in this city. Folks, there's consequences for our city's program. So when you spend $2.3 billion underwriting upscale development in gentrifying neighborhoods, you're depriving the coffers of money it needs to fund government. So if you can't tax well-to-do neighborhoods because the land is now property tax exempt because you created a TIF, guess what you have to do? You have to put fees and fines on ordinary things like driving a car. So our government more and more is being financed by the most regressive form of taxation that you can. And they impound cars. Like if you have a parking ticket, you get pulled over, they take your car away. It's utterly ludicrous. It's crazy. By the way, is Mayor Rahm bragging about the impounding of cars for people with parking tickets as he goes on his pat himself on the back, self-congratulation, I'm getting out of office tour?
Let me look here. No.
Oh, isn't that interesting, Mayor Rahm? He wants to be named. They want the Riverwalk named after. Maybe we should have a car towing pound. The pounds. That's what the Mayor Rahm car towing pound. That's what we should name for Mayor Rahm. Don't get me started.
Oh, he is raging out, people. Calm down. Good Lord.
Hold on, I'll have a glass of water.
Thank you. Please. All right, we did 4 of them. We got 3 more to go. We'll do those before we end the show out.
All right, very good. Before I bring on Nicole Miles, I have to say Miles has been with us from the get-go. I think it was 2 days before the show, I was watching a basketball game. I was picking his dad up to go take him to a basketball game, right?
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Miles, could you help us out? We're doing this podcast. And he said, yes, he would do it. And he has just been the first face that anybody who comes to the Ben Joravsky Show sees. You greet him at the door.
That's good.
Better
ugly.
So, Miles, first of all, thank you very much for the great contribution you made to the show. I really appreciate it. And so tell folks what you're going to be doing.
So what I'm doing is I'm going to Bern, Switzerland, in Europe. I'm going to be there for 2 months playing baseball and coaching and living with my girlfriend.
Okay. In that order?
Well, you can mix it up however you want to. But that's something I really wanted to do. I'm playing for a team called the Bern Cardinals. They're a semi-professional team. I'm still a college baseball player. I have a year left at Roosevelt University. Go Lakers.
Roosevelt Lakers, not the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah. We're the Roosevelt Lakers. And this is an opportunity that I had to go overseas and spend time with my girlfriend as well. And really just, become a better player, learn more about other cultures in the world, and just, you just see different things for the summer instead of being in Chicago. So it's something I'm really
Get you out of Chicago. Now, excuse my utter ignorance, and I'm going to expose really utter ignorance as a guy who rarely gets out of the studio, let alone Chicago. What languages are the main languages that they'll be speaking where you're going?
So the main languages are Swiss German, French, and a little Italian. But where I'm going to be is going to be Swiss German, which is the same thing as German, but it's different. Swiss German is different. They have like their own like little ways of saying certain words, but if you know German, then you're gonna know Swiss German well. It's just little different things. It's like Chicago, New York. It's both English, but we all have our different like little lingos and slangs.
Do you speak any German?
A little bit.
Okay.
I'll be able to get around and say hi to people and learn.
And the people you coach, will they be speaking German or English?
They're most likely gonna be speaking a lot of German. My teammates are also Hispanic. So that's cool. So I'll be able to talk to them a little bit as well, but it's gonna be mostly like German, Swiss German is that I'll be speaking.
Well, when you come back, you'll be fluent in German. We'll bring you back, and you could do translation for all our German listeners.
Right? Yeah.
So you'll be gone for 2 months.
2 months.
Whoa.
Oh man, yeah.
Oh, and I got to mention the live stream chat room and the listeners are warming up to you, Miles. We got Steven. He weighed in here. He said, anyone think it's suspicious that you never see Miles and Lori Lightfoot in the same room at the same time? Suspicious he should be stopping this job the same time Lori starts. Just think about it. Just think about it.
I think you were the one. You ushered Lori in. One of the guests we ushered. You remember?
Yes, and that was so scary because she had these 4 really big security guards around. I tell all my friends, it's like we were like in the the elevators are just a little bit slow.
I can't deal with those elevators, Miles.
Yeah, and then so I look around. I'm like Lori Lightfoot, and these 4 big guys, like 6'4", look at me, and then what was her assistant, Nadia?
Yeah,
Nadia was like, yeah, she's right here, and I was like, okay, cool. Then we get in the elevator, and then we're sitting there. For some reason, the key wasn't working, so I'm kind of stuck. I'm stuck in the elevator with Lori Lightfoot and these 4 big security guards and her assistant. That was like. It was the scariest thing in the world because I see them just like looking at their phones like, man, I wonder when we're going to go up there. And I'm like, yeah, I am too, as I'm trying to make the elevator work, getting us up.
And it's not the biggest elevator in the world.
Oh no, it was small. It was hot. I was nervous.
Yeah. And you had to get her here. And I'm like, where's Miles?
Yeah.
So anyway, well, Miles, again, thank you very much. And I hope you come back. Sure. Doors always open as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
And have a great time. Hit a home run, train them in baseball, and have fun with your girlfriend.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me and this opportunity. Thank you to all the listeners. Dennis, you're the man. Leah's going to do an amazing job here. This show is going in a great direction. I could not have been more happy to be here.
All right, very good. That's the great Miles Porter. Pride and Joy at Evanston, Illinois. And it's going to go to Switzerland and make a name for himself, but then he'll come back. And I'll be right back here in the Ben Joravsky Show. Thanks a lot, Miles. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, we're going to switch gears, go to Nicole. And Nicole, it's been a while since you've been on this show. Put those headphones on. There you go. Yeah. There you go. You got it. There you go. You're a pro. So welcome back.
Great to be here.
And things have changed since the last time you were on the show. You were what was your position with the union? You were the steward, did you say?
I was chief steward, but at that time I was still an EPA employee. Being a lawyer for EPA, I was prosecuting cases. Now I've taken over as the president of AFGE Local 704, and so I'm working full-time as a union president.
Wow. Well, congratulations on the new gig. I don't know if it's good news for the EPA because you were a very effective lawyer for the EPA. I presume they hired someone to replace you. We're going to get into staff cuts. Have they hired somebody to replace you for the job that you had?
They have not hired anyone to replace me, and I was senior counsel for water and water enforcement, and no one has replaced me.
All right, well, let's talk about that for a little while. The first thing, there's so much on the list of things to talk about, but at the top of the list has to do with the Environmental Protection Agency under Donald Trump, as you put it, shrinking the staff. What does that mean when it says shrinking the staff?
Yeah, so this is something that he announced right from the top of the administration. Right in January of 2017, he announced that he wanted to shrink the EPA staff by 40%. And we are 2 years into it, and he is doing it. And so right now, we started in 2017 with an EPA Region 5, which is the Chicago office. And let me just tell you where we cover. We cover 6 states. So we cover Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Our 6 states, we have a main office in Chicago, and we have some satellite offices. We had 1,098 people at the beginning of the Trump administration. Today, I asked management how many people we have, and we have 962. So we're down 140 odd people doing the work that we had, same work, if not more, that we had back in the beginning of the Trump administration. So we're down 140 people. That's a lot for us. And we, right now we believe we cannot protect, human health and the environment with the people that we have on board right now.
All right, let's talk about the jobs at the people that he's cut. So 140 people have moved on. Now, I presume, before we go any further, correct me if I'm wrong, this is through attrition. In other words, like in your case, Nicole gets a new job, there's a vacancy in her old job, they just don't fill it, correct?
That's right. There's people quitting. There's people who are leaving and retiring. What Trump has done is made the being at EPA not a pleasant experience. These people came to the EPA to protect the environment, to do good for the American people. He is making their tenure at the EPA, not something that where he is rolling back protections instead of allowing these people to protect the environment. And so these people want to leave. So people are leaving in droves, and then he's not replacing anybody.
All right, let's talk about some of the jobs of the people who have left. Give me an example of some of the jobs.
Well, so one of the things I did want to highlight today is he is not replacing any folks who are enforcers. And these are the people who, when someone violates the law, they would bring a case against that person, and they would, for instance, fine them, and bring them back into compliance and make sure that they wouldn't violate the law again, stop polluting. And so these people, the enforcers, are people that they are not replacing, and they are stopping them from stopping any enforcement in the field. So the way that we know this is the amount of inspections that are going on in the field. These people have to go out and inspect. They catch the polluter. They stop them. We know that the inspections have gone down so much that now, from the time when the administration started to the time when, to the time now, the inspections have got, are down to half to 1/3 to 1/4 of what they were when we started out.
There's on a parallel thing. I saw this an article. A similar thing is happening with the IRS. I hate paying taxes as much as the next person, but you have to pay taxes if you're going to have a government, if you're going to finance things for the public good. And there's attrition going on at the IRS. And guess what? That means wealthier people who are the ones who probably would be audited in the past are not being audited. So the burden goes to the rest of us. That's a consequence of attrition with the IRS. So when you talk about a lack of enforcement, do you think there's more pollution that's just going unaccounted for, that's going unpunished, unsupervised? Is that the direct consequence? What kind of pollution are we talking about?
Right. No, that's exactly right. When there's no enforcement going on, there's no deterrence out in the field. So there's no one thinks that they're going to get caught. So then, there's a license to pollute. So that's what's happening here. We're talking about folks who are discharging into waters of the United States. We're talking the Great Lakes here in Region 5, as well as big streams that we covered, like the Ohio River, the Mississippi River, as well as small streams that you think of, like the Mahoning River in Ohio, streams like that. We're talking about polluting the air. One interesting case is Sterigenics, the big case out in Willowbrook.
Yeah.
EPA took no action in that case. EPA started to look at that case by putting in the monitors to measure, the pollution coming out of Sterigenics. And then once they found that there was high levels of that pollutant coming out of that, it's called ethylene oxide coming out of that facility, they took no action to stop that facility from polluting. It took the state of Illinois to do something about that. And so there's right there a case where EPA is not taking any enforcement action there. That is so unusual. In any other administration, EPA would have stepped in right there because it was their monitoring. It was EPA's monitoring that caught.
Now, when you say any other administration, you go back, you've served under Republicans, correct?
That's right.
So what is different about Donald John Trump's administration as opposed to other, like George W. Bush? I'm not saying he's a model environmentalist. So what's the difference between Trump's attitude toward the EPA and, let's say, George Bush's?
Well, yeah, I mean, Trump is, like I said, and we're 2 years into Trump trying to burn EPA to the ground. I mean, this is an administration that is not only hostile to environmental protection, they don't believe in it at all. Trump, I mean, Bush at least believed that polluters should be caught. Trump does not have any interest in doing that, so he's putting up every barrier you could possibly have to trying to catch any environmental polluters. He's trying to, put up barriers to enforcement. Our folks are feeling those barriers and are not enforcing on any level of the way that they used to. And the Sterigenics case is the perfect example. Like I said, here's a situation where EPA did the monitoring. After you do monitoring, then you're supposed to enforce. There they didn't. We had to wait until a new administration came in the state of Illinois, and then the Pritzker administration came in and took an action.
Yeah, that's another point I had to make. The under Rauner, the previous governor, that was very weak on that particular case.
Exactly.
And Wisconsin, the Scott Walker administration, severely wimpy on enforcing environmental laws, et cetera. So you talk about a license to pollute. It's a two-front thing. On one hand, the enforcement. What about the monitors? Are we seeing cuts in staffing of people who actually go out and test the water or test the air or do the kind of monitoring that you're alluding to?
Exactly. So when I say that there's no inspectors, those are the folks that go out and check to see if folks are complying. Mm-hmm. Those are exactly the folks that are in the field. When there's no presence in the field, no one's going out there to see if there's any pollution going on. So some of the states have folks that are, inspections, but the federal government goes out unannounced. Mm-hmm. The state goes out, and when the state goes out, they call the facility beforehand usually. The federal government goes out unannounced. So the federal government really does catch folks when they're polluting, and that's not happening in the agency. I'll give you an example. So there's the underground injection control program. This is otherwise known as the fracking people. These are the people that go and take a look at these underground injection wells that, where they shoot pollution into the ground. This is the fracking wells. In Region 5, they did 1,200 inspections in 2000, approximately 1,200 inspections in 2016. 2017, they did 700. In 2018, they did 500. In 2019, so far, now we had a 35-day shutdown, but in 2019 so far, there's not one that's been recorded.
Wow. So we went from 1,200 to 0.
There's not one on the books that I could find in the region. So this is, a dire situation, and I'm here to witness it and to tell everybody about it.
Now, there seems like there's a full problem. One hand, people leave, they don't replace them, and the other hand, it seems as though they're making life very difficult for the people who work there to probably encourage them to leave. So what are some of the things they're doing to make life difficult for employees of the EPA?
Yeah, so they're doing things like doing additional, more than usual, disciplinary actions, trying to cut down on the amount of days they can work at home, cutting down on or trying to watch very closely, whether or not they can work, what schedule they can work, all these kind of perks that the federal employees used to get because they take a cut in pay, and vis-a-vis working in the private sector. Now they're monitoring those very closely, and like I said, they're taking disciplinary actions. So things like that in order to just harass them, so that they want to leave and not work at the EPA anymore. Mm-hmm.
And so is there some philosophical justification for this? In other words, if you can give the devil its due, and we're really struggling to give the devil its due here, do they have some kind of belief that the market will govern itself? I'm trying to figure out what rationale could there be for saying you're going to cut away 40% of the EPA workforce to, how do they think the environment, is the environment just going to protect itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think they don't believe that these regulations are worth enforcing. I think they think that there's too many regulations out there and that these regulations are useless and won't result in any kind of environmental or human health benefit. And so they would rather them, us not enforce them, and they would rather industry go unmolested. And so that's what they're aiming for. They're aiming for folks like us not to be in the field and not bothering these folks and allow them to these industry and allow them to just go ahead and have their way with the streams and the air that we breathe and have them allowed to pollute unmolested, like I said.
Now, presumably the people who have made this determination are not the one getting cancer from pollutants. Nicole Cantello is my guest, president of the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 704. We'll be right back with more from Nicole after this.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
All right, sad news, everybody. After 5 years in Andersonville, Murray & White has made the difficult decision to close their doors. But everything in the store is on sale now. Notable sale items: Voluspa and Nest Fragrances brand candles are 20% off. These lines can rarely be found on sale, so while 20% isn't the greatest discount, lovers of both these popular candle lines have been buying them up. All rugs, 30% off. In-store and new orders through June 1st. All floor sample furniture, 30 to 50% off. Antique furniture pieces, 40 to 50% off. Pillows, 40% off. Picture frames, 40% off. And jewelry, 40 to 50% off. Mirrors and wall art, 30 to 50% off. Home decor and accessories, 20 to 60% off. Lamps, 50% off. A lot of discounts here, people. It's in Andersonville. It's Murray & White. Once again, after 5 years in Andersonville, Murray & White has made the difficult decision to close their doors. But head there now and get some fantastic deals. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
All right. That super cool music means we're coming down the wire here, but we still have a little time left. Nicole Cantello from the American Federation of Government Employees in the studio with me, talking about the cuts, devastating cuts, in my humble opinion, that Donald Trump is making at the EPA. I don't know, at the same time this is happening, there's just a report that I sent you this text earlier today, Nicole, breaking news. Scott Pruitt, the former head of the EPA, $124,000 they're trying to, of expenditures having nothing to do with enforcing environmental laws, having nothing to do for protecting us from toxins, pollutants, etc. What was it, furniture? furniture he was. I forget what it was. 124 grand. Do you remember what it was that he spent the money on?
He spent it on first class tickets.
Oh, first. That's
for
him.
him
Sorry.
And his security detail.
Yeah.
And there was no reason for it except that it was somehow it endangered his life to fly coach.
I wouldn't want his life to be endangered by flying coach, but I just, this is just me. I would rather have the money going, let's say, to combat companies from polluting the air with cancer-causing agents,
Or to protect children from lead exposure. That would be good.
Yeah, that would be really good. Now, there was an article in the New York Times. I showed you this. I had to kind of laugh in a very painful way. It's bad. It's real. Just don't call it climate change. Mayors in the Midwest hope to find solutions without bringing politics into it. And I urge everybody to read it, but I'll boil it down to this. Because our country has not unified in accepting that there are decisions by men that shape the environment and are causing problems for the environment, because of the Republican Party, I'll just be open about it, denies climate change as a consequence, that mayors who may be Republican in communities that may be full Republican who are seeking help and assistance dealing with the consequences of climate change are like pleading with environmentalists not to talk about climate change because they're afraid of offending Donald Trump. I thought it was the Republicans that did not subscribe to political correctness, Nicole, but it sure seems like it's political correctness of the right-wing version. You're not allowed to call it climate change, even though it's climate change, but we have to deal with it. If you're a Republican mayor of a town in Iowa and you're like, the rivers are flooding your town, you need help, but you're not allowed to say, you can't say it's anybody's fault because that goes against the grain. It's utter madness. Do you agree with me on that one, Nicole?
Oh yeah. I mean, we feel it at EPA. So like on the outside world, everybody knows climate change is here and is causing these devastating effects. But inside the administration, talking about climate change is like the third rail. You cannot talk about it. You can't, mention it as part of your, daily, everyday work. And in fact, when Trump proposed its budget for FY 2020, which is the next fiscal year coming up, he cut all climate change programs at EPA. And so, this is not something that Trump is going to admit needs any kind of attention. And if you're smart as a bureaucrat working at EPA and you want a program to go forward or you want some supplemental environmental project to be approved, you would not ever want to associate it with climate change, because that would be killing it in any, towards any kind of approval process. So yes, for everybody else, climate change is an accepted thing, but for this administration and inside the four walls of this administration, climate change does not exist and is not an important thing to worry about. My concern really is that, we've been told that we have to do something about climate change within the next 10 years, or we're all cooked. And not only are we cooked, our children are cooked, our grandchildren are cooked, and then the next 20 generations are cooked. And this agency, EPA, is the agency that's going to have to deal with the mandatory reductions of, carbon in our environment. And this president is devastating this agency right now that's going to have to, in the next 10 years, be at the forefront of taking on this like massive reduction in carbon for our country. And how are we going to build up this agency back up right at the moment when we needed to tackle this gigantic problem? That is just a huge issue that I worry about, because right now he's tearing it apart. And, this agency is going to have to, at some point, take on this gigantic problem. And, how are we going to, build it back up? It's going to have to take on a lot more staff. It's going to have to deal with the biggest problem maybe humankind has ever faced. And right now we're going backwards. Mm-hmm. We're in reverse. It's just, it seems absolutely an awesome problem.
Well, in my humble opinion, I'm speaking for myself, not for you or your union. I think that the immediate long-term goal, if you will, you got to get a new president because this president is insane on many levels, but his attitude toward the environment is particularly devastating and destructive. That's me speaking. Now, short-term, please give our listeners some sense of what they can do. They're hearing this distressing story about all these cuts at the EPA, the people who monitor pollution, look for pollution, the people who enforce the laws to prevent people from polluting, the lawyers who drag people in the court. These people are being let go, fired, retired, whatever, not being replaced. So it's effectively raising the white flag, letting people pollute at will. Very dangerous, very destructive. Nicole, what recommendations can you give our listeners if they want to get involved, they want to put on pressure? What can they do?
I would just say Congress has a big role to play here in what EPA does, and putting pressure on Congress to put pressure on the executive branch is the best way to go here, especially Republicans. There are Republicans who are very interested in keeping their constituents happy. A lot of constituents are being poisoned right now in various different ways because of the inaction of the Trump administration. I'll give just one example. There's a chemical out there called PFAS. That chemical is poisoning a lot of people drinking water. In the state of Michigan is the one state that is the most poisoned. There's 13 different bills in Congress right now that's trying to deal with this, many which are bipartisan, that are being proposed by Republicans. We are the agency that will have to clean up that mess. You would think that there would be Republicans out there that would want to staff us up and have us be a very potent agency in dealing with that mess. So putting pressure on those Congress people who want us to deal with things like that would allow EPA to be fully funded and fully capable of dealing with environmental problems.
What a bizarre notion. Let's just think about this. Pause and think pick apart what you just said. Republicans sense that their constituents want bills that protect them from environmental destruction, so they'll support or propose bills, and yet they stand back and allow Donald Trump to annihilate the entity, the agency that's supposed to enforce the bills. So what's the point of passing a bill if you're not going to have people to enforce the bill?
Well, they think you could do more with less. That's, their theory of environmental protection.
I have a theory. Let's try to do more government with less Republicans. That's my theory. How about that?
I'll go with that one.
Oh, I was going to say that was Ben speaking, not Nicole, but she weighs in. And is there a website people can go to that gives them more information about all these?
You can follow us on Twitter at 704AFGE.
Okay, very good, Nicole. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have you come back again for updates on this. And we're heading into an election cycle, folks. So there is one ultimate remedy that you have. We got listeners. Illinois is a blue state, but people in Wisconsin, you drink the water, you breathe the air. All right, don't pretend like you can live with pollution. People in Michigan, great job in that last election, Michigan. What was it, 80,000 vote difference for Donald John Trump? Hope you love your polluted water. Let's get it right this time, Michigan. You screwed it up in 2016. Let's get it right in 2020. That's Ben Joravsky speaking, not Nicole, right? Nicole, that's me speaking. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right, very good. D, you got an update for us before we head out the door?
Absolutely, I do here. First off, live stream viewers. Well, hey, we had the live stream up today.
Yeah,
yesterday just crapped out on me. I couldn't figure it out. But live stream viewers, check out the guns on Ben Joravsky. Look at that, wearing his T-shirt today. You don't have actual guns, your arms.
Yeah.
Look at those guns. My goodness. Flexing there. All right.
It's from bike riding.
Yeah, he's a bike rider, guys. All right, so we're going to finish out our list here of Lori's list of goals in her first 100 days as mayor of Chicago. But first, we have a national update before we get out of here. Announcing his administration's immigration reform plan, Donald Trump said today that, quote, to promote integration, assimilation, and national unity, future immigrants will be required to learn English and pass a civics exam prior to admission.
I'd like to give that civics exam to Trump. I don't believe Trump can pass a civics exam. Let's ask Trump how TIFs work. There we go. Ben.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Donald Trump has to take a civics. Hoping there's no ethics part of the civics exam. He'll definitely flunk that part of the civics exam. Good God.
Trump adds that if the legislation can't be passed for, quote, political reasons, it will wait until Republicans take back the House and retain control of the White House and Senate in 2020.
God, there's a frightening thought. We just talked to Nicole. They won't. Wait, Republicans, you want to take back the House to deal with the all-important issue of whether immigrants can pass Donald Trump's civic exam, which he can't pass, but you're not going to enforce environmental laws. So you're going to die from pollution, but at least as you're gasping out, you'll know that some immigrant knows ethics the way Donald Trump wants him to know ethics. Good God. Don't get me started, D.
Only 4 more days until Lori Lightfoot becomes mayor. Lori Lightfoot shared with us today her to-do list as mayor in her first 100 days. All right, we've covered 1 through 4. We'll recap those. Keep Chicago safe. Prepare a budget that's certain to include painful cuts and tax increases to satisfy $277 million spike in pension payments. Build more affordable housing to stem Chicago's population loss. Oh, and bring equity to an overly punitive ticketing policy that has unfairly targeted minority motorists and forced thousands into bankruptcy. Oh, Joravsky was riffing on that one. He was pissed.
Yeah.
All right, so it is now time for
Number 5.
Number 5 on our list to do here in her first 100 days as mayor. Level a playing field, titled in favor, we were just talking about this, titled in favor of Uber, Lyft, and Via by dramatically increasing ride-hailing fees, imposing a New York-style cap on ride-hailing licenses, banning out-of-state motorists who have flooded Chicago streets, or perhaps all 3.
Yeah, Lori was talking about this. Remember, she said this at the Hideout. She's big on this, and it's one of her favorite issues. And add to the list, allow Uber drivers to collectively bargain and form a union. Come on, Lori, join that crusade. And by the way, Lori, her name is Nicole Canty. I want you to give Nicole Cantello a phone call and join her crusade to try to put some political pressure on Donald Trump and the Republicans, not just to decimate the EPA, because we breathe air in Chicago. We drink water in Chicago. It affects us too. We have an environment here in the city of Chicago. So don't duck and dodge that issue, Lori Lightfoot.
2 more to go. Time for number 6.
I'm
wait.
not a perfect person.
Sorry, guys. That was JB Pritzker. There we go. Sorry about that. Number 6 here is reform a city council bracing for what could be its biggest ever corruption scandal, in part by televising committee meetings and broadening the already sweeping powers of Inspector General Joe Ferguson.
All right. I'm all for having televised city council meetings. Let's let Inspector General Ferguson take a look at how the city council spends its money. But if you're heading down that road toward aldermanic prerogative, don't get me started on that, D.
Oh, God.
All right, I'll let aldermanic prerogative for another moment.
And our final one, it's not make more trips to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Number 7.
Yeah, I got a feeling she won't be coming back anytime soon.
Me either. And seat a cabinet that's likely to include at least some holdovers from Mayor Rahm Emanuel's administration. That was
Why?
number 7. I don't know.
I didn't make the list. Bang up job. What? Please, nobody from finance. I mean, revenue. I mean, God, these are the ones who fed us that TIF deal, the Lincoln Yards TIF deal, and the 78 TIF. I guess that she's trying. That's a very Chicago thing.
All right, Ben Joravsky not too keen on number 7.
Yeah, all right. No, Lori with number 7. Ixnay on 7. Ixnay on Evan.
There you go. Nice.
Man.
Good pig Latin.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody. And also, we're almost to our next caption contest, 1,500 likes, and we will have our next caption contest. Right now, at the moment I'm looking at it, we are at 14,000. 1,429 likes. So head over to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page, BENNY, the letter J Show, JORA, V as in Victory, SKY. Give us a like, tell your friends, and when we hit 1,500, we'll have our next caption contest.
All right, very good. Good job. As always, I want to thank Nicole for being here. I want to thank Kim Ortiz, Evan Moore earlier in the show. Miles, have a great trip, great safe time in Europe. We'll see you in a couple.
Miss you.
Yeah, we haven't. He hasn't left yet.
We will miss you.
And Leah will be replacing you, stepping in. We're going to welcome her to the show tomorrow. And also want to thank the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. Yes, indeed. They call him White Lightning back in Alton. And
nope.
Dr. D, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Google Play, Apple Podcast, I think we're on Stitcher. Check it out. And like I said, we're almost to 1,500 likes. Head over to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page at Benny J Show. Give us a like, follow, share, review, whatever you want to do. And we hit 1,500, we will have our next caption contest. I believe it'll be a JB Pritzker caption contest. That sounds fun. See you tomorrow.